Today we'll be talking about troubleshooting using the EnGenius cloud. For the following weeks ahead, on the next set of webinars, we'll be concentrating more on the switches, so we can discuss in depth what are the features of the switches, um, how are switches used on a network, what's the purpose, and what's the application, why we need switches. But for today, after troubleshooting, I'll also be discussing about the new features that are coming for the cloud. There are a ton of new features that have just been added, I think, 2 days ago. And then there are more features coming, so I'll be discussing that later on as well. And then, as usual, we'll have the Q&A section afterwards. Michael and Nancy are with me today. So if you guys have any questions, you can then just use the Q&A function on Zoom, or you can type it in chat. For the rest of the people that come in late, I'll be recording this webinar session as well, so it will be uploaded on our YouTube page too. Okay, so troubleshooting on the cloud. The slides that I use are actually from our ESS training or EnGenius Solution Certification training. So I took some there, basically the key points that we can use today, and put it here for the troubleshooting portion. Because usually when people what people need to know for the cloud is how do we troubleshoot if there are problems. So good thing about the cloud is we get a lot of information on hand. Everything is provided by the system, so you would need less time in terms of the probing. Say for example our dashboard. Here on the main dashboard on the cloud, you can immediately know if there's a problem on your network, in particular on your hardware, on the client devices, or in terms of interference. So the graph here on the upper left hand corner would immediately tell you if one of your APs are overloaded in terms of the number of clients connected to it. Is it consuming too much CPU resources, too much processing? Maybe in a commercial area, all of the clients are connected to one single AP instead of distributed amongst the rest of your APs. So from the same page, you can also see if you have a lot of interference in the area, whether it's from a third-party access point or whether it's from other sources or non-Wi-Fi interference. You can also, of course, see here if there are APs that are offline, switches that are not running, and as well as the client, the percentage of clients between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So you would get a exclamation if you have more clients on 2.4, because what we want for Wi-Fi, like what I always say, is to have clients on the 5 gigahertz side, because on 5 gigahertz you have more bandwidth to play around with, you have more throughput, and it has less interference because the channels are spaced far apart. Now on the AP side, if you want to diagnose if there's a problem with your hardware, you can see in a glance right away if the specific AP is experiencing high traffic in terms of interference, as well as your throughput usage. Now if you go into the details, then you can get more information. Here it will generate real-time metrics. So the statistics here on the right side is generated in real time. It's updated every second. So what the AP will do is, or what the system will do is, for example, I'm the viewer right now and I select this AP, which is on the 8th floor. It will tunnel in to this access point, so the access point can communicate to my PC directly, providing me the live statistics. It wouldn't go through the cloud, so our cloud wouldn't suffer processing because of that. So it will tunnel in directly to your PC. You can see the metrics in real time, and then from here you'd know whether there's a problem with your CPU. Is the memory overloaded? Is the throughput stable, or are clients eating too much throughput? So you can get all that information from here. In terms of troubleshooting what the clients have, we made the client timeline so that it will be easier for you to do troubleshooting without having to probe too much. If a client has a problem with Wi-Fi, from here, from your client timeline, you'd be able to see that right away. You would be able to see when the client connected, what time, what day. You can backtrack to previous days as well. If I'm not mistaken, client timeline history will be 7 days. Maybe they will expand this in the future, but this one consumes a lot of storage and processing on our side. So I'll update you guys on the correct duration soon. So you can get information here when the client connects to the AP, if the AP triggered band steering, if it let the client steer to 5 gig, or it just let him stay on 2.4. Maybe his signal on 5 gig is weak. It will also tell you if the client roamed from one AP to another, and of course it will inform you if there's a problem with the client. So these are the states that the client can be in under this client timeline. So if you select a client, you'd know whether the client when he connected the access point at what time. In a way, you can also use this to track staff. For example, in an office environment, you can check when they logged in, when they were there at the office, at what time, and what time he left, or when he disconnected from your AP. You can also see if he moved from one AP to the next. It will inform you which specific access point. And then if the AP again steered the client from 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, it will inform you as well. The most important part, if he failed to connect to the SSID, or he failed to authenticate, it will let you know as well. So if he has problems with Wi-Fi, you'd be informed. If his problem is keying in the incorrect password, you'd know as well. And then since we added a block list on our last update, client timeline will also let you know if the client is attempting to connect a client which has been blocked. So other forms of troubleshooting that we can do on the cloud is in terms of coverage and connectivity. So let's say on your client timeline, you verify that one of the client devices have been having very, very weak signal. Then you check the AP, the rest of the clients are connected well with good enough RSSI. So here on the map, you can verify where that AP is, where the client that's having a weak signal is experiencing a problem. And then from there, maybe you can check, is the client's position too far away from the AP? Do I have a dead spot on the area where the client is? So maybe from there, you can make adjustments, like increase the transmit power of your access point to increase the range. Or reposition the AP, move it further apart from each other if you have a lot of access points. Another thing that you can do is, if the signal is really, really weak, maybe there's not enough access points to support the area that you're deploying the AP on. Maybe the area really needs 3 APs, but what was deployed is only 2 AP. Or maybe there are many walls in between the client and the access point. That's why on the area where the client is, you're experiencing a weaker signal. So all that you can find out by using the floor plan view, because it has this heat map function built in. So you can plot your obstacles. You can plot, for example, the material of the wall. Is it made of glass? Is it made of wood? Do you have a drywall here, or a concrete wall, etc.? So all that information, all the different types of obstacles would affect the signal quality of the access point, which you can view from here. Just to add the floor plan view, you can add multiple floors as well. If let's say your deployment area is on a multi-story building. Okay, I see people raising hands, so just type in chat if you have any questions. Thank you, guys. So let's say you've gone through the statistics, you've went through the interface of the cloud, but you still can't figure out what's wrong. Of course, anytime you can converse with support using the intercom system. You can ask them for help, tell them what you're experiencing. So on the other side, we can help. So from here, you can attach like your screenshot of your problem. You can define the issue. Actually, you can also backtrack to previous communication with the team. And if you really need help, let's say you're new to the Wi-Fi environment, you haven't deployed any, or it's your first time deploying Wi-Fi, and you really need support, remote help, you can generate a passcode on the system. And then here on the passcode system, you can select what's the duration, how long will this passcode last, 1 hour up to 7 days. And then after that, once you have generated the passcode, you can pass this on to support, and then support will be assisting you. They'll be accessing your account remotely, depending on the duration of what you set. Afterwards, we'll be able to see what's going on your network. We'll be able to verify why the client can't access your AP, or for instance, if you're having issues registering an access point or trying to find a specific device from your network, we can help you with that as well. If, let's say, we found out that the problem is on the hardware side, maybe one of the APs are faulty or one of the switches are faulty, we have a function which we call replace or replacement. So what it does is it tries to reduce the amount of downtime as much as possible. So let's say you have a 20 AP deployment and then 1 or 2 of the APs go down, maybe because of hardware issues or because of a power surge or something. Maybe the APs didn't have any UPS to protect it. So if the AP goes off and you happen to have buffer stocks sitting by, you can just quickly replace the unit, plug in the new one, so long as it's registered, add it on the network, and then on the system you can click on replace. So with the replace function, all the existing settings of the previous device will be carried over to the new one. So this applies to access points as well as switches. So imagine if you have a switch that you've fully configured. Let's say all the VLAN, different ports have different VLAN, all your tagging and everything, and then it crashes. Then it will be such a pain to reconfigure everything, especially if you didn't take note of what the settings are. So with the replace function, since every setting is stored on the cloud, you can just quickly hit replace with the same model of the old one. So once you select replace, select the unit from the list, it will copy over the settings to the new device. We have two options for replace. One is just to replace the unit, but it will keep the device under your inventory. If you plan to return the unit to us for RMA, you can select the second option. So this would allow it to automatically deregister from your account. The reason why is because if you replace a unit, let's say it's not faulty, you just want to try the replace function, but you never deregister it, you won't be able to register it on a different account. So if you're gonna pass the unit to someone else, you have to deregister it first. Okay, in terms of troubleshooting the connection of the access point, let's say you have added the access point on the cloud. So you're pretty sure that everything is okay on your side, network level, how it's wired up and everything. But then when you added it on your inventory, on your network, it doesn't go online. So it's there, but it's showing as offline, and you can't figure out what's wrong. So here, on the access points, we have dynamic SSIDs. Now this SSIDs will be active once the AP checks and finds out that there's a problem on the network. For example, here, let's say you don't have Ethernet access. It's plugged in, but you don't know if the cable is there's some cuts on one of the pins. So it's gonna broadcast this SSID. It's gonna start with EnMGMT or N management, followed by the last 4 digits of the MAC of that access point. So you can see this SSID just by scanning your Wi-Fi, as if you're gonna connect to a Wi-Fi connection using your mobile phone or laptop. So that means you don't even have to connect to the AP, find out what's the IP address, and check what's wrong. So just open your Wi-Fi connectivity, scan the area, and then from there you would see the specific error. For instance, the AP does not have Ethernet access. There's something wrong with the data connection, so it will inform you that there's no Ethernet. Or if you have, let's say, an IP issue, maybe the DHCP server wasn't able to provide an IP address to the access point, or if all your APs are in static, but then you forgot that one of the other APs have the same IP as yours, or one of the other devices on the network is running on the same IP, then it's going to broadcast that you have an IP conflict. So same thing, that if the AP detects that it cannot communicate with a gateway, or let's say the proxy or DNS settings are incorrect, you will also be informed. Now, if the problem is on the cloud side, on the EnGenius cloud server, then you'd also be notified by the access point that the problem is on the server side. So with this dynamic SSIDs, it would be way easier to solve those offline issues. Let me move towards the new features on the cloud, because we have a lot of new features. Hopefully we have time so I can walk you through the UI on how it looks like. So first up on the new feature list would be the splash page. We added the splash page like a month ago, but we haven't added the ability to resize the photos. So we just did that 2 days ago. So now when you add a photo on the splash page, you can resize it, you can drag it around whichever part of the screen, and let's say you're uploading a logo or something else, you can just quickly place it here on your splash page and drag the size. This square right here with a red arrow, you can just resize it straight away from here. You notice the background is also different from this page because they added a add background feature. So this will make it easier to upload a background photo without having to tweak the HTML file. But of course, again, if you want further customization, you can freely tweak the HTML coding here on the system. Another thing that has been added is the ability to kick clients and block them out from the network. So I think a week ago, we added the ability to block clients per SSID. So let's say I have SSID A, I block a client here, so he will be blocked from SSID A. But if you have SSID B, he will still be able to connect there. So this new function would be you would be allowed to block the client from your whole network. So let's say on your entire network you have like 10 APs and then you have 5 SSIDs. When you block a client from there, he'll not be able to access any of those access points even if he attempts. And then we also have an option now to kick the client out temporarily. So main difference between blocking and kicking is if you kick a client out, he'll be disconnected from your network, but he can still reconnect. When he tries to attempt to connect, he will still be allowed to enter. But if you block him, he will be permanently blocked unless you remove him from your block list. Now we have an access control list. It can be per SSID or for the whole network. The limit currently is about 1,000 MAC addresses per network that you can block. Once we add the VIP function or the whitelisting, you'd be able to whitelist 50 VIPs per network. So 1,000 block clients and 50 VIPs. VIP function we're not adding until, if I'm not mistaken, next month, first week of next month. But that function again is, let's say you have encryption on your system. If you tag one of the clients as a VIP, you tag its MAC address. If ever they walk into your Wi-Fi connection and try to connect, he doesn't need to authenticate at all. So he will just be bypassing the system and allow him to freely connect. So when we block a client, of course, we need to inform them that he has been blocked. Without any notification, he might think that he's just experiencing a Wi-Fi issue. So we added a splash page. It's like a customizable warning message that you can splash to the client when he attempts to connect again. So let's say you block a client, he tries to connect. This page would splash on his screen, whether it's a mobile phone or a browser. So from here, you can customize the message. You can inform him that you have been blocked. Please contact the administrator if you want to be unblocked or something like that. Or please call this number and so on and so forth. So at least he'd know that he has been blocked or denied from accessing your network. Later on, yeah, I think we have time. I'll show you where you can access this page. So the features that I'm showing you right now, it's actually activated already. But there are a couple of features that we'll have upcoming. So there are some changes as well in terms of NAT mode. So on the SSID setting, we have this bridge mode function as well as an NAT mode function. Just a recap, bridge mode will allow the clients, once they connect to the SSID, to obtain an IP address from your router, the HTTP server, or gateway, depending on what you have. If you set it to NAT mode, usually we use this for guest networks. So in NAT mode, the access point will be the one to provide the IP address to the clients, just so that you can have a different set of IP address for them, for security as well and isolation. So let's say you have a guest. Your internal network, for example, is 10.0.x.x. So when they connect to an SSID with NAT mode enabled, their IP address would show as 172.16.x.x or something else. Now on this update, we added the option to customize the DNS as well. So why do we need to customize DNS? Some clients, they use their own DNS server on the backend. If you use bridge mode, by the way, the DNS server would follow what you have on your router side or what is on your system. So in NAT mode, it's the same way, unless you customize the DNS. So again, some clients use their own DNS server so that they can filter out content, or if they have local local devices that can be accessed through certain URLs, they can tie that onto their own DNS servers. So if they need to customize the DNS, they can be able to do that now under NAT mode. Okay, another function that we added is an option to disable Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax on the 5 GHz side. Previously, it was activated just for 2.4, but we also activated now for 5 gig. What is the reason why we want to disable Wi-Fi 6? The problem is that some devices right now, especially legacy devices, those that are not how do I say it? Those that are end of life already, that are not supported by their manufacturers. Let's say maybe a laptop that is running 802.11g and has a Windows XP or maybe Windows 7 as well, Windows 7 operating system, which is no longer supported by Microsoft. Maybe there wasn't any new driver released for their 802.11g adapter to support Wi-Fi 6. So when that happens, these clients will not be able to see your SSIDs that are running AX or Wi-Fi 6 because technical side, well, during the handshake process, when this client tries to broadcast a beacon to alert the nearby APs that he wants to connect or scan SSIDs, the access points, Wi-Fi 6 APs in general, they would respond to the client, but this client would not understand the frame that's coming from a Wi-Fi 6 access point. So he'll just drop that frame and he will not receive the SSID. So the client will not see this SSID. So to prevent that from happening, the workaround is to disable AX from the radio. Usually we only do this on the 2.4 side, because if you do this on the 5 gig as well, that means you won't be able to utilize 802.11ax for your device. You may be able to use AC, but that defeats the purpose of having the latest equipment. So as much as possible, we recommend to disable Wi-Fi 6 only if there's an abundant number of clients in the area. Let's say in an office environment, most of the clients are still using legacy wireless adapters, then maybe it would be better for them to disable Wi-Fi 6. But again, if the number of those clients are just like 3 or 2 or 1, it would be much better to have Wi-Fi 6 enabled so more of your clients can benefit from it. There's been some quality of life upgrades as well on the cloud side in terms of, for example, when we create a new account on the cloud, your default organization name will be named as org or just simply org. But we've experienced some issues wherein some clients never change the default name. So what happens is when other people add them for their multi-tenancy, a new org will appear right here. And if all those people, let's say 5 people, add each other for multi-tenancy, for redundancy, and they never change their org name, all of these orgs will be named by the default org. So it will be difficult to track which one is which because all have the same name. So now on this new update, basically whatever your username is on the cloud, that would be your default organization name, just for ease of access. Another upgrade that we did on the system is, so when you, for example, have a switch or have an access point that, let's say you configured a static IP, management VLAN, VLAN settings on the device, when you add it on the cloud before, the settings would be wiped if you pre-configured it before. So now on this new update, if you have pre-existing settings on the unit, it will be carried over on the cloud. So the cloud will respect whatever settings you have and it will store that on the cloud. So you would still continue to have those settings. Let's say you configured IP addresses, you configured VLAN on the switch, so that will be maintained on the cloud. But then afterwards, once the cloud is already managing those devices, then whatever you do on the local side would be overridden by the cloud side. I hope I'm making sense here. So again, if you have a new AP, or let's say, okay, let's talk about a switch. If you have a switch that you have been configuring using standalone mode, using the browser to control its settings using the IP address, and then you decided that, hey, I want to add this to the cloud, I want to use the cloud. So when you do that, the cloud would carry over whatever settings you have there and store it on the cloud side. But then once you're using the cloud to manage your switch, and then you access the local UI and change something, those settings would not reflect anymore. All the settings must be done through the cloud already. So this is also a form of security measure. So let's say somebody managed to access your switch locally and then tries to play around with your IP settings, your VLAN settings, and everything. So the cloud would always override whatever the settings were changed there. Okay, let's talk about a couple of upcoming features that we'll be launching. This one will be launched end of the month. or the 30th of May. So we call this the contact tracking feature. So it's very timely now that R&D came up with this because of the situation that's going on in the world. But what it does is, let's say you have a staff, and then for some reason he got a virus or something, and then the local health organization wants to track who were in close proximity of this person, or in short, they want to do contact tracing. So from the system, you can track here, let's say you want to backtrack on previous days. So for contact tracking, you can backtrack up to 7 days and on specific time slots. So let's say here on the example, I want to see on this specific day at 3:30 p.m. who were connected on this access point, so that I can check who were in close proximity of this person. Because we know that access points have a long range depending on your power setting. It may be 100 meters, or it can go as far as 500 meters or more if you have stronger antennas. But of course, the client device would be carrying, or the clients, well, they would be carrying a mobile phone or a laptop. The effective range of a laptop and mobile phone, if when connecting to Wi-Fi, is maybe 100 meters to 140 meters maximum. In an office environment, maybe they'd most likely be within 30 meters or a 50-meter radius of your AP. So from here, we can quickly check how many clients are in close proximity of this person. So this is the client right here. And then at this time, these are the people connecting to this AP. The names, you notice these are different names, because on the next update as well, we'll be adding the option to add an alias for the client device. Let's say this is an iPhone, this is a PC, but you know who these people are because they're staff. So you can rename them or add their alias right here on the system to quickly track where they are. So you can use it for that function, and you can use it for different purposes as well, in terms of checking who are in the office and so on and so forth. But basically, the main point for contact tracking is so that you'd know who are in close proximity to this person at that specific time frame. So you can check that out on the system. So again, this will be added end of the month. Another update that will be coming out would be a rebranding of the EnGenius Cloud application. So now we have the EnGenius Cloud app. I believe some of you have tried it out already. It's available on Play Store as well as the App Store. So we're rebranding this to EnGenius Cloud to Go. So what does it mean? So when we do the rebrand or the relaunch, what's going to happen is we'll be launching or unlocking configuration from the application. That basically means that you'll be able to do full configuration, monitoring, and troubleshooting from the application itself. Even if, for example, you want to set up a new deployment and it's the first time you're setting up a cloud system. So with the app alone, you can register your account, you can add the device, you can set it up. There's going to be a wizard as well, like a walkthrough. For example, it's the first time you're going to add this AP. You can go through a wizard which will run you through the SSID, what password you want, do you want some scheduling, do you want to customize the IP and all that. So there's going to be a wizard that's going to be easy to use from the app. And then from there, once you add it on your cloud network, the AP would be running as normal. So you can do this without having to even open up a PC or your browser. So from the app alone, you'll be able to configure all your cloud devices. Of course, since this is tied to our EnGenius Cloud system, same thing applies in terms of the limits. There wouldn't be any limit on how many devices you can manage using the app. There wouldn't be any limit in terms of site capabilities, the network capabilities, the SSIDs and everything. It will still be the same. But of course, if you want full configuration, you can still go back to the browser and access everything there. Okay, so do you guys have any questions before I show the UI? I think there are a few here in just a while. Okay, so there are a couple of questions here. Let me just read them through. Okay, one question here from one of our guys asking, how do we use channel utilization? Okay, so like the previous webinar that I had in terms of what do you call this? Channel planning. So channel utilization is read in a way wherein we want to know if we have interference in the vicinity or in the area. Wait, let me go back to that slide. So on this graph, for instance, if you see a spike, that means the channel that your AP is currently on. This one, for example, is in channel. This one is in channel 6 on 2.4 and channel 153 on 5 gig. So you can see that on this port. So if you see a spike, it will tell you which radio it is that's having the issue. Actually, it's color coded as well. Blue here means 2.4, green here means 5 gig. So 5 gig is pretty flat. That means there's no interference. 2.4 is a bit jaggy, and then there's a spike here. So that spike on this portion means that there are other access points nearby that has the same channel, which are causing interference with the unit. If you mouse over that spike, it will tell you if that is one of your APs, if it's a third-party access point, or if it's a non-Wi-Fi source. So you can quickly be informed right away. Now, just to backtrack, interference is bad for Wi-Fi because it can cause issues such as poor connection, heightened latency, and maybe intermittent connection at worst cases. Okay, and a second follow-up question here is, what is the percentage to know whether it is healthy or not? Basically, if you see a spike, it means it's not healthy already. But if you mouse over it and it highlights in orange, that means there's really a problem on that network. But if you see a spike, maybe it's just one blip on this utilization map, then you can ignore it because maybe somebody just passed and which caused the interference. But if you see like a steady heightened interference here, let's say the blue line is on this level, then that means that you're going to have issues in terms of interference. Maybe it could be that channel planning wasn't done properly, or there are just a lot of third-party access points nearby. Or it can also mean that your access point's transmit power was set to maximum in a commercial area. So, like what I've discussed previously, transmit power being set to maximum is always a no-no. You should set your transmit power accordingly depending on the environment. Third follow-up question is, if I see that the percentage is high, how do I know which channel I can go with, as channel utilization does not show what channels are nearby? Yeah, actually, if you see that you have a spike here, or you see the channel utilization is very high, and you're not set to auto, that means you've set it to a fixed channel. That means the channel that you're on currently has a spike. Now, what you can do to know what channels are nearby is use a wireless analyzer to check this out. But when we launch our Pro access points, the one that has a dedicated scanning radio, you'd be able to scan the environment because it has a built-in RF analytics tool. So it's like every AP that you have on the Pro lineup would have a scanning radio built in. Basically what it does is it scans the environment, it checks for interference, it will give you reports in terms of which channel is very noisy at which time of the day. So you get really specific and in-depth report in terms of channeling once we launch our Pro access points. Okay, can you show the option from where you can block the user? Yeah, I'll be showing you in a while. I'll be going through the UI. So I'm just walking you through. I'm just going to the questions now. EnGenius Cloud to Go, is this as an upgrade version of the EnGenius Cloud, or do I need to download a new app? So good question. Yeah, EnGenius Cloud to Go would be a rebranding of the EnGenius Cloud app. So on your side, you will just get an update if you already have downloaded the EnGenius Cloud app. So you don't need to re-download a new app or re-register. It's the same login that you're going to use, but basically it's an application that's enhanced with new functionalities. Okay, so the rest of the questions, I think Michael have addressed it. Thank you, Michael. So let me walk you guys through the user interface now. Just a moment. Let me share my screen. Okay, so since most of the questions were from channel utilization, let me go through that first. Wait, let me select an AP that's utilized right now. Okay, so like say for example this portion. So here we can see that it's a bit spiky on this access point right now. This access point is running channel 4 and 153. When I mouse over it, the system tells me that majority of the graph is still okay. But some parts, especially at 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. yesterday, there are some issues. Like for example here, I think this is about 5 p.m. There is a non-Wi-Fi source which is causing interference on my access point, and Bluetooth interference as well. But the spike happened just momentarily, so maybe someone just passed nearby the AP or something was blocking the access point at that time, that's why it happened. But if you have really high issues right now, but which I don't think I can show you, if an actual error right now. Yeah, if you have any issues, the system will inform you what to do, what to suggest. If it tells you to switch to a different channel, it will tell you that as well. It can also suggest you to lower down the transmit power or check the floor plan on your coverage area. So if you have issues, you would be specified by the AI on the system. Okay, so let me show you guys some of the new features that we have for the cloud. Here under SSID, this is where you have your splash page. Like I mentioned, you can modify the splash page now. Like here, they have a nice logo. Wait, let me go to mine. Okay, so let's say I want to modify this splash page. So what I can do right now is change the background. So here, there's a new button for the background image. I've preloaded some pictures right here. So if you want to add a new photo, all you need to do is go to this insert image page. You can upload an image, or you can add via a hyperlink or from the web. So once you uploaded the photo, you can go to your background image and select that background, and then it will be applied straight out. If there are texts that are hard to read, let's say this text right here, you can change the font anytime, change the color to make it more visible. Now, adding photos, it would be the same way. You just have to use this tool right here. So once you have uploaded the image, you can select the image that you want to upload, and straight away from here, you can easily resize it. So if you want to move this up, you can just do so. And there's no limit as well on how many photos you want to upload. If you want to upload a whole menu for advertisement, you can do that as well. This logo you can also remove if required by the end user. But this banner, unfortunately, I cannot remove it right now unless I tweak HTML. But just for the sake, let me show you guys how to remove it. So there is a line right here for this border. It should be this line, 1, 2, 2. Let me try. So yeah, so that makes the UI or the interface cleaner. So you can do a lot of customizations here on the slide. So you can do the same on the other template as well. So back to wireless, the option for any T mode customized DNS now can be done through here. Again, if ever the client has their own DNS server on the system and they want to use any T mode, so now they can use that function with a custom DNS server. Disabling Wi-Fi 6 can be done through the radio settings, so long as you're within the network. So from here, you have the option to disable Wi-Fi 6 on 2.4 or 5 gig or both. But again, if you're going to disable it for both, that defeats the purpose of using a Wi-Fi 6 device. So only use this if you really experience that specific issue wherein you have a lot of legacy clients that are not able to see your SSID when you broadcast with Wi-Fi 6 enabled. So most of the cases, the legacy device would only be running single band, so that's 2.4 only. Okay, so I think there are other questions here. Let me go through them. Oh yeah, I forgot to show you. So this is where you can block clients. So for example, you're on your network, and then you go to your client list. So the client list, as you can see right now, it's only showing 2 because I'm only checking for today. So you can expand your client list to up to a month. And then from here, let's say this Galaxy S9, let's say I want to block it from the network. If you want to temporarily kick it out, if he or she is currently connected, you just have to highlight this part, the client, and then on the end you have the kick button. If you block him, he will be blocked from this SSID. But if you want to block it from the network, or you want more options, so just tick the client, and then here there's an access control button. So this normal is basically, it will unblock the client. We'll be adding the VIP function here as well from the selection. And when you go to block, then you have a couple of options. First is, do you want to block him from the current SSID that he or she is connected to, or do you want to block that person from the whole network? So if you block the person from the whole network, let me try that right now. That person will be added on your block list. So your block list can be found under configure, and then you have a new button right here, which is access control. So when you go to access control, you would see the person or the people that you have blocked. So let me unblock them so they can access the network again. So there are two methods that you can view your block list. One is for the entire network. The other one is per SSID. So if you did a block only on the specific SSID, then if you go to that SSID, there's an access control tab as well, where you'd have your blocked users here. So back to configure, when you go to general settings, this is where you can edit your blocked message. So when you go to access point, below here, this is where you can customize the message. For example, you have been blocked, please contact admin or something. So at least the person knows that he has been blocked, and that he needs to call admin for attention to check why he has been blocked for the system. Okay, so going back to your questions, just a moment. Okay, yeah, one person is asking about contact tracking. Let me splash the screen again. Yeah, for contact tracking, unfortunately I cannot do a live demo right now because we don't have access yet. We only have this screenshot on what it will look like when we launch at end of the month. So again, what contact tracking does is you'll be able to pinpoint who the people are in close proximity to this specific client on that day or on that specific time frame. So let's say Amy right here, you want to check who were in close proximity with her. So on the system, when you go to the client timeline, there will be two tabs already. So one is the normal client timeline, which is basically how the client connected to your network, and second is contact tracking. So on the contact tracking tab, when you go to the specific day, and then you can select the time frames from here, you can check which AP she connected to, and the system will tell you who are the people that are connected on this AP at the same time that she was connected. So you can see the details from here, and then from here you can export that data to PDF. Also, you would notice that these people carry different names because we will be unlocking the alias capability as well on the cloud. So you can tag individual clients with their aliases, their names, or let's say it was just a guest who walked into your system and connected to Wi-Fi. So you can rename this as guest number 1 and so on and so forth. So one idea came from one of our distributors is that what you can do actually is to track all the guests that walk in and out of your office is just let them scan the QR code on your system. So let me go back to cloud real quick. So for example, you have guests on your office. So in order to log that they were there or that they were present in your office, what you can do is have them scan this QR code. So you can print it out, paste it on the wall or something. So this will trigger their connection to the access point, and when that happens, their device will be registered on your client timeline. So from there you can do the alias. Let's say maybe this was a grab delivery, or this was a person who walked into my office for inquiries or something. So at least they're also logged on the system. So they don't have to do much. All they need to do is scan the QR code using their mobile phone. They'll be automatically authenticated on the system, and they'll be already logged on your client timeline, as well as the contract tracking list as well. Okay, so for the next set of webinars, we'll be releasing the schedule to you guys maybe by end of this week or early next week. But we'll be focusing more on the switches. First topic would be switch fundamentals. So what is a switch? Why we need a switch on the system, and what is the purpose of the switch? Somebody's requesting if they can have the slide. We'll have this what do you call this? We'll have this webinar posted on YouTube as well if you need reference. For the slides, maybe I can generate a PDF and pass it on to the country manager that's handling your country. Okay, there's one. I'm not sure if this is a question. For hotspot service, can it be attacked by malicious scripts or other types of programming once connected? I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question? But while you're rephrasing the question, let me show you something here on the system regarding one of the protections on the cloud. So on the cloud, we have this. What do you call this? We have this feature that we call 802.11w. So it's a standard feature on IEEE. What it does is it protects management frames. So what happens here is it tries to prevent, let's say for example, some forms of DOS attacks on your client, and those that try to intercept handshakes between the client and access point. So there are some hackers that broadcast or spam client devices with de-authentication packets. This will trigger the clients to disconnect from your network, and then from there they can intercept and do some crazy stuff in terms of hacking. So what protected management frame or 802.11w does is it protects clients that are connected to your network from these types of spamming or attacks by hackers nearby. So even if they blast out the authentication packets, your client would remain connected to the AP because it will only communicate to a secure network with your access point. That's using 802.11w. So even if hackers try to blast them, spam them with attacks, they wouldn't disconnect and they wouldn't be intercepted by those types of attacks. Okay, question here regarding the server side. How many cloud instances are available, and how does the access point associate to a specific cloud instance? So when you create a cloud account, your IP address, or if I'm not mistaken, there's a selection which you can select whether you are located in the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Now, depending on your location, where the closest server is, let's say the data center of AWS that we're using for the cloud may be in Singapore. There's one in the US and there's one elsewhere. So there are multiple instances that are running at the same time concurrently. So the AP or your account itself would select a cloud instance on the background. By the way, this is all running on the background. So the AP or the device would select the cloud instance or the cloud server that is closest to the location of the AP in terms of latency or traffic, so that when the cloud or the AP communicates to each other, there would be less latency depending on the selected server. If the concern is regarding redundancy, so don't worry about that. So since we have multiple servers on the cloud running the FAS system, there would always be a backup of a backup. And Amazon itself, AWS, they also have their own backup within each data center. Okay, question here. Can a hacker change the logo or splash page or the embedded logo on your cloud? No, the hacker would not be able to do that unless he has access to your cloud account directly. Let's say on your multi-tenancy, let's say you have two people under your multi-tenancy, and then the other person unfortunately shared the password to someone. That's the only time that he may be able to access your account and modify something on your page. But what a hacker can do is spoof your splash page. Let's say you have an SSID broadcasting. When you connect, you have a particular page that will show up. So what a hacker can do is he can deploy a rogue AP. When he deploys a rogue access point, he can copy your SSID, he can copy your splash page, and tries to spoof it to pretend that, hey, this is the real page. So we're coming up with, again, the pro access point, which can prevent that from happening. We'll have this feature called the wireless intrusion detection system, so you'll be able to detect if there are nearby rogue APs in the vicinity that does that. Well, we're also working on a protection system as well. So even if the client connects to the fake access point, he would be immediately blocked. Good question here is how much bandwidth is needed to communicate for the cloud. So the access point, every time it communicates with the cloud system, usually it takes about 20 kilobytes, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not per second. It depends on when the access point communicates to the cloud. So for example, you change some setting on the cloud side and then you push it to the access point. The data communication between the two would take about 20 KB. Now, every time the AP updates a cloud server with statistics information, let's say there are new clients on the system, I'm going to update the cloud. There's new traffic, I need to update the cloud for monitoring. So that takes about 20 kilobytes as well. So it doesn't consume much data if you try to compute it, and it's only going to communicate to the server if needed. So if the AP is idle, maybe from time to time, like every minute or maybe every 5 minutes, it will just update the cloud that, hey, this AP is still alive, I'm still using this private IP, I'm still using this public IP, and so on. By the way, the user manual for the cloud is found here on the upper right hand portion. If you click on user manual, you'd also get information on release notes. So the release notes here will be updated on what's new in terms of the cloud features. So last update here was March, so they should be updating this pretty soon for the May updates. So all the changes on the cloud would be listed here. What's new, what are the new features, as well as the fixes and bugs. If there are bugs, you'll be informed here what are the previous bugs that have been fixed and so on. So when you go to access point, you would also know what are the changes on the new firmware version. So I think they just updated this page because 1.3.5 is now here. So you'd know what are the changes on 1.3.5 on the access point. If you want to go on specific APs, you can see the individual changes here too. So for the switch side, so yeah, we just released 1.1.31. So all the changes on the switch would be listed out here as well. So for the mobile app, if you want to know the changes too, if we launch a new version, you would also see it from here. So this is a good reference in case you need to know what's new on this version, what are the changes on this version, and let's say you're contemplating whether you want to upgrade or not, or let's say you're currently using the stable version and then you want to try the beta version, so you'd know what are the features there on the beta version. Okay, so question here is how many characters can we type on the alias under contact tracing? Unfortunately, right now I still don't have the information on my end. So most likely you're gonna have enough characters as needed for the alias. You should be able to type like the full name and maybe the phone number as well. But once we release the feature, then I'll be updating you guys. Maybe on the next webinar when the feature has been released, then I could talk about that as well. Okay, so I think that's about it for the questions. So again, guys, if you came in late, don't worry. This webinar session will be recorded and I'll be uploading it on YouTube. If you have any additional questions, you can ask me or Michael or Nancy or the rest of our sales team or country managers for additional questions about the cloud or anything about EnGenius. So thank you guys for attending today, and please keep safe. Thank you so much.